So if you made it to this video, you've probably encountered some issues trying to get a thumbnail out of any of the video players that are in Bubble. As of the time of this recording, you cannot take a screenshot of a video player through one of the screenshot plugins, and you cannot pull the thumbnail out of any of the video player plugins. In this video, you're going to see the workaround. For the workaround in this video, we're going to head over to wistia.com, click Get Started, and then we're going to head down here where we can just get ourselves a free trial, or a free account rather. Once you've gotten into your account, you'll just be able to head over to your account area where you can navigate down on the left-hand side here to API access. Here on API access, just go ahead and copy this. Once you've gotten that copied, head over and just note it down somewhere. So next up, what we're going to do is, I've already got this one page set up. It only has two visual elements on it. It has a button with no workflows. Well, that gave it one, but with no workflows, and then an image that's waiting for the thumbnail. So what you'll learn in this video, and if you carry on with this, you'll basically learn a workflow that you can tag onto or add into the end of wherever you're uploading a video, and then after that video, you also want to include a thumbnail with it so that you can, utilize that thumbnail within your app. So let's go ahead and see how we might do that. We're going to head over to the plugins area, and we're going to say add another API. Under this, we're going to type in Wistia, none or self-handled for the authentication, and then add a shared header of authorization, value bearer, and then type in your API key access there. So this first one, what we're going to do is we're going to say this is the Wistia video upload. We want this to be an action. JSON is fine. Post, and then the URL that we want is this one. And then for the header, we want content type and some long thing that I forget, multiport form data. And then you'll want to also, for the body type of this request, set it to form data or it will not work. That was a big troubleshooting thing and a hot tip to pass on. And then here for this URL value, go ahead and make that private. And what I have here is just to show off a video here. So a nice, easy, digestible 7-second video. And I'll bring up the video timing at a later point for how much time you want to let things process between the two. So with all of this stuff in place, let's see, we might eventually add a project ID. I'll just do that for now. We'll see if we can initialize it. Nope, it can't be empty. So I'll just forget it. Okay, and we can see that that was successful. You'll want to make sure on this step that you grab this thing called this hashed ID. That's actually the video ID. And then go ahead and hit save. So this hashed ID, I'm just going to note down over here because we need to use that for this GET request. And then we might as well just go ahead and set up the next call, and this would be Wistia get thumbnail. We'll also make this one an action. It's a GET request, and it's to this API endpoint. And this hashed ID, this allows us to dynamically insert the ID over in our workflows when we set those up. But for now, just to make the API call, we'll just add this value. And then let's see, for the header, yes, we just have this application place, JSON. So content-type, both capitalized, and then we'll initialize that one. And I should note that why don't I just go ahead and head over to my content, because after I did that upload call, it sent this here. And then now with this call here, we can see the data that we'll actually want to go and get and play around with. So there My suggestion is just to take this URL right here. So under this, let's see, thumbnail URL. So you can get that, or you're welcome to, if you look into the Wistia API and you're wanting to just do something a little bit more lightweight. For example, you can take these URLs, change the .bin to .jpeg, and then append a few additional things if you read into their thumbnail documentation. But my suggestion, and just for the purposes of this tutorial demonstration, we're just going to go with this thumbnail URL. So that will be the data that we're accessing. Next up, we're going to also add one last call. For this call, we're going to say it is the Wistia delete video call. Make sure that that is an action. Double check that, or you won't get it right. Delete, or it won't work right, rather. And then use this URL here. And these URLs, these will all be put into the description so you can have easy access. Now, one thing that you'll want to make sure is that the video that you have uploaded over here, I actually have a slightly different ID because of some testing. So just make sure that you have an ID of a video that is actually on the Wistia account. Otherwise, it won't delete, or it won't initialize the call. So, and then make sure that this is unchecked, because we want to dynamically insert the value of this, because it's going to be a different video every time, right? So I'm going to initialize that call. We can see that it successfully did this action of deleting. And then when I go back here, I'll just hit refresh and there's nothing there anymore. So cool. Now with that being set up, I'll navigate now to the page where I'm building out the workflows and everything for this. So we can see that we're starting from scratch here. And what I actually want to do, I'm just going to show off a quick data setup. So I'm going to call this, let's see, Wistia thumbnails for the data type. I'm going to create it. I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a file. So this will be the video file. And then I'm going to give it a hashed ID. No, actually thumbnail. And the thumbnail is going to come back to us as a URL. So I'm just going to leave it as a text rather than, no, I take that back. I'm going to go with an image and we'll just call it that. Okay, let's see. Anything else that I think I might need? I think that should be good. So we have this special data type and we'll get into it in a second. And one of the things I'm also going to do here is down on the input forms, I'm going to add a file uploader and then make this 300. Have that display in the middle. Something like that. And then make this first. Cool. So what I'll have here is I'll upload a file and then this thumbnail will show up here. And to do that actually, so I'm working on a little bit of setup here just based on how I have things, and then we'll get to the workflows. So I'm going to add a new custom state. I'm going to say this is the thumbnail. We'll make that. No, actually, I'm going to, that is the, it's a thumbnail. And then that is a state type of Wistia thumbnail. Why? Because we're going to see in a moment that when we set up this workflow, there is something particular about the way that this API works. So we're going to utilize a backend workflow. And then this is the point in the video where I'm going to share that in order to do this, you'll need to have a paid plan. But I would imagine anyone that's, you know, this far into their bubble development world, I hope that it would be the majority of folks that have a paid plan on Bubble. If you do not, you're welcome to try this same setup a couple different ways using custom events or just the same workflow, but I found it worked reliably this way, and I'll explain at the very end a separate way. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to head here and I'm actually going to create a new thing, and the thing I'm going to create is this Wistia thumbnail. And then for the video file, I'm going to set that equal to the file uploader. File uploader A's value. What this does is it takes this value, stores it in the database, so that when we make our Wistia post call, API call, first we want to make this HTTPS : because in the database it shows up as // and so the result, the video file. Okay, so we're going to send that over to Wistia, and then the next thing that we're going to do is basically there's a little bit of finagling is the technical term for this to get it to work, but what we're doing is we're uploading a video here, and then Wistia is going to encode it. Now, without taking the extra step of getting involved in webhooks and making this video much longer and more complex than it needs to be, we're just going to simply follow a rule where if we upload a video, we're going to wait for 30 seconds. So this is 1 second, so here we'll say 30. And in those 30 seconds, we'll just assume that's going to encode. Now, you're going to, a point about this, you're going to want to do this and test this out for your own video lengths. And so my rule of thumb would be if you have a minute-long video, let it encode for a minute. So do this as a minute pause. If you had a 10-minute video, let it encode for 5 minutes. If you had a 30-minute video, let it encode for 15 minutes. Something along that kind of rule of thumb. Maybe 1 minute of encoding per minute of video, up to 10 minutes, and then kind of divide by 2 and go from there. Because their systems are pretty fast. So next up, now that we've uploaded it, before we go and get the thumbnail, we're going to create a new API workflow called Wistia get the thumbnail. And we're going to leave all these unchecked, leave this as manual definition, and then we're going to add 2 parameters here. One is a thing called hashed ID, and that is just a piece of text, and then another one that is a Wistia, and that is a Wistia thumbnail. Okay, and so why those? Let's go back to our thumbnails here, and then we're going to call this API by doing schedule an API workflow. And actually we could delete this pause, and that pause would be used in other configurations, but for here we're going to go with, for this particular one, current date and time. It just reduces seconds, 30. Reduces the amount of steps in this workflow, so it's more optimized, which is something great to always be thinking about. So this Wistia, we created this new Wistia thing here. We're going to pass that over, and this hashed ID comes from the result of step 2. So we uploaded the video, and then we get one of the responses back from that upload is this hashed ID. So we pass all of this over to our backend workflow. And then if you don't understand backend workflows, no worries. You get extra free goodness in knowledge drops today. But if you just follow these steps here, it's going to work, assuming that you have this data set up, and you might not need this extra Wistia thing. I'm using it. You'll see in a moment how I'm using it. I'm using it so that I have something in the database to attach. If we went over here and we looked at, there are no Wistia thumbnails yet because we haven't created any. But for this data type, we actually just want to store the value we get back from the thumbnail here so that we can use it in our app. So you might have a different data type. So for example, if you had a user and a user's like giving an introduction of themselves, and that video is tied to the user record, then rather passing this Wistia thumbnail, you'd want to pass a user here. So this type would be user. It's whatever type that your final thumbnail is tied to, and it's going to be stored in a field that is attached to that type. That is the important point. If you didn't catch that, rewind it and go back, because I'll say it again, wherever your thumbnail is going to be stored at, it's going to be stored in a field, and that field is going to be attached to a type. That type goes here. Okay, so next up, we're going to want to make our Wistia call to go get the thumbnail. And how are we going to do that? Well, this hashed ID, Bubble knows, because we sent these things as part of this workflow, that it's this hashed ID. Cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make changes to a thing, and I'm going to change the Wistia, which you saw there as I was selecting this. It's right there. We don't even have to do a search for anything. because Bubble knows that we pass this Wistia, or it could be a user or whatever, and then we're going to make a change to the record so we can just store that thumbnail. So that thumbnail comes back from here. And that is an image one, and we're storing a URL in it, which we'll take a look at what we get. Then, next step, after that all happens, then we want to do our last thing here. We're going to go ahead and delete that video. And the video we're going to delete is this hashed ID. So that way, because Wistia limits you to only having 10 videos with the free plan here, then you just upload it, you get your thumbnail, and then delete it and move on with your life. That's how that all goes. So this Wistia thumbnail, now it's going to be stored here in the database in this field. And in order to, just for the purposes of this demonstration and displaying it here on this thumbnail page, we're going to go for this thumbnails. And if you recall, I set a custom state here, which we're going to access this custom state now, this Wistia thumbnail state, and then we are going to get the thumbnail from that. And let me just double check that I set that state. So, okay, it looks like I want to do that as well. Element actions. We can set that state after this, after it calls that API workflow. And we just want to give it the value, the result of step 1. So we created this thing, we set it as the thing here, and then now we refer to that thing in this image so we can take a look at what we get. Cool, so tons of setup, but take a look back if you need to follow the exact steps of all the workflows. To recap again, we did one, we used the API, we uploaded that file to the backend of Bubble so we can have a URL. Then we used the API to upload a video, giving it the URL from Bubble. Next up, we scheduled this API workflow that we created in the backend workflows area that is waiting for one of the results. It's like, which video is it? This hashed ID, just think of it as the which video is it thing that it's working with. And then this Wistia, this is just helping us internally in our Bubble world passing data. So, and it's going to wait for 30 seconds. And now this 30 seconds will change that if you have a higher length video. My video is like, less than 10 seconds. So that's why mine is only 30 seconds. And then just for the purposes of this demonstration, this is only within my world particularly. You could be your world as well, but I'm just showing off in this demonstration. You might not need to be showing someone on a video what exactly your thumbnail is. So I'm only just doing this so that we can see in our UI that the thumbnail actually shows up there. You might just store that into your database somewhere and then use it wherever you use it without this step here. Then to recap again, so back on our, or to finish our recap rather, not recapping again, it is just picking up where we left off. This backend workflow, after that video is uploaded, it's waited for whatever time period, mine 30 seconds. You will go and get the thumbnail, and then you'll make changes to the thing that, again, this is just my world. Actually, I think you'd want to store yours into your database regardless. So this is just store in database step, and then just delete that video out. Okay, so let's go and see if this works. So we'll upload this, and we can take a look at a couple things here. We'll say get thumbnail. And so that went, and it's waiting 30 seconds while it uploads. And this actually went quite quick. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so we can see here, I clicked, it said 67% there for just a second for the high definition one, and but I imagine already finished. So one of the things that we can check out then here is over here in our data. Okay, so we see that, and I actually see that the backend API ran because we see a thumbnail here, and then over here on the front end we see that thumbnail inserted here. So that's it. For anyone not on Bubble's paid plan, in order to make this work for you, what I would suggest doing is that somewhere down the line in your chain of activity on your app, after you've uploaded the video to A, Bubble, but then B, also sent it over to Wistia, just find some place further down the line in terms of people clicking around and stuff happening where you might store this workflow from the backend workflow. So what you want to do is just this set of workflows, these three. So go get the thumbnail, store the thumbnail, delete the video off of Wistia. And that I'm doing it back here just for the sake of this video. And I know that someone out there is saying, hey, why not just put it onto this exact same workflow and daisy chain it one after the other? Or why not go ahead and just create a custom event and then trigger that custom event from here? Well, the reason is that I did not have very good luck with that for some particular reason with the API. What I would get back is the very first thumbnail when Wistia, a video is being uploaded before it's encoded and before it's able to pull something off of the media of that file for an image. It has this kind of filler image, and I kept getting that back. So you're welcome to try a number of configurations. This is one that worked, and that other workaround that I just gave should work for people who are not on the paid plan. Again, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it helpful. If you did, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.